Tinanggal ang mga senador ng Liberal Party sa mga komiteng hinahawakan nila sa Senado. Kung sino-sino sila, alamin natin yan mula sa aming kasama, si Ria Fernandez. Magulat mula sa Senado. Ria?
Yes, Princess. 4 na senador na miyembro ng Liberal Party ang natanggal sa kanilang hinahawakang komite. Sa sesyon ng Senado Lunes ng hapon, nagmanifesto si Senador Pacquiao na tanggalin ang committee chairmanship ni na Senador Franklin Drilon, Risa Hontiveros, Bam Aquino at Francis Pangilinan. Pinalitan ni Senador Alfrecto si Drilon bilang Senate President Pro Tempore, si Senador J.V. Ejercito naman ang bagong Health Committee Chairperson kapalit ni Hontiveros. Si Senador Cheese Escudero naman ang papalit kay Aquino bilang Education Committee Chairperson, habang si Senador Cynthia Villar naman ang uupong Agriculture Committee Chair kapalit ni Pangilinan. Una rito, Princess, ay nagkaroon ng caucus ang majority block kung saan hindi isinama ang mga LP Senator. Sa ngayon, bahagi na ng minority block ang mga ito. Bago ito, sina Senador Antonio Trillanes IV, Recto at Escudero lamang ang miyembro ng naturang grupo.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you to both gentlemen on the floor. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1256 under Committee Report number 13.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1305 under Committee Report number 29.
Committee Report number 29 is in order.
Mr. President, this is the expanded maternity leave law. The parliamentary status of the measure is in last Wednesday. We already terminated the period of interpellations, so we therefore move to open the period of committee amendments. May we now move to open the period of committee amendments first.
Any objection? There being none, committee on the period of amendments is now open.
May we now recognize the sponsor, Chairman of the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
The distinguished lady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, may I respectfully introduce as committee amendments the following. Insert at line 24 of page 2, provided further that no notice shall be necessary in the event of a medical emergency. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further, Mr. President, insert at line 26 of page 3, provided further that no notice shall be necessary in the event of a medical emergency.
Clarification,
Yes, Mr.
Majority Leader,
President.
distinguished lady. This is in the nature of an individual amendment, just for purposes of record.
Mr. President, I think the answer to your question is in the affirmative, and therefore I withdraw the motion, Mr. President. I move that we open the period of individual amendments and recognize Senator Risa Hontiveros for the individual amendments.
Senator Risa is recognized for the period of individual amendments to her committee report.
Yes, Mr. President. Pardon my error, and I stand corrected. So to repeat, but properly now, to introduce these as individual amendments. First, Mr. President, insert at line 24 of page 2, provided further that no notice shall be necessary in the event of a medical emergency. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secondly, insert at line 26 of page 3, provided further that no notice shall be necessary in the event of a medical emergency. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next, insert at line 3 of page 6, after the word salary, or otherwise amount to constructive dismissal. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objections? There being none, motion is approved.
Next, Mr. President, insert at line 5 of page 6, after the word SSS, and the Gender Ombud of the Commission on Human Rights, CHR. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And last but not the least, insert as a separate section 14 the provision, whoever fails or refuses to comply with the provisions of this act shall be punished by a fine of not less than 5,000 pesos, nor more than 20,000 pesos, and imprisonment for not less than 6 years and 1 day, nor more than 12 years, or both, if the act or omission penalized by this act be committed by an association, partnership, corporation, or any other institution, its managing head, directors, or partners shall be liable to the penalties provided in this act for the offense. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further, Mr. President, good majority leader, I respectfully move to renumber sections 14, 15, 16, and 17 to sections 15, 16, 17, and 18 respectively. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you. Mr. President, we have a 1-minute suspension and have a copy of the new Section 14 before I move to close the period of individual amendments, Mr. President.
The session is suspended.
We ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move to close the period of individual amendments for Committee Report 29, Senate Bill 1305.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill 1305 under Committee Report number 29.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and Majority Leader.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill 4631 under Committee Report number 36.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Corresponding House bill is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the measure renewing for another 25 years the franchise to GMA Network. Parliamentary status of the measure is that last Monday we already terminated the period of interpellation. We now move to open the period of committee amendments, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the period of committee amendments is now open.
To introduce the committee amendments, we move to recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, Chairman of the Committee on Public Services.
Clarification, Majority Leader, period of committee amendments or individual amendment?
Committee amendments, Mr. President.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. President, committee amendments are as follows. On page 2, line 10, between the words satellite and or insert a comma and the word terrestrial. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 3, line 8, between the words provide and adequate, insert the phrase free of charge and the comma. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page 3 and line, between the words time and to, insert the phrase which is reasonable and sufficient. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 10, after the word facilities and before the comma, insert the phrase of the grantee. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 10, between the words the and population, insert the word pertinent. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page and line, add a slash and the letter S in the word population, then insert the phrase or portions thereof. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 11, after the word issues, insert the phrase and relay important public announcements and warnings as necessity, urgency, or law may require. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same line, On the same page, line 14, after the semicolon, preceded by the word enterprise, insert the phrase promote audience sensibility and empowerment through, but not limited to, closed captioning, then add a semicolon.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Hence, the entire Section 4 shall now read as Section 4, responsibility to the public. The grantee shall provide free of charge adequate public service time which is reasonable and sufficient to enable the government through the broadcasting stations or facilities of the grantee to reach the pertinent populations or portions thereof on important public issues and relay important public announcements and warnings as necessity, urgency, or law may require, provide at all times sound and balanced programming, promote public participation, assist in the functions of public information and education, conform to the ethics of honest enterprise, promote audience sensibility and empowerment through, but not limited to, closed captioning, and not use its station or facilities for the broadcasting of obscene and indecent language, speech, act, or scene, or for the dissemination of deliberately false information or willful misrepresentation to the detriment of the public interest, or to incite, encourage, or assist in subversive or treasonable acts. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page 3, line 23, replace the semicolon with a colon. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 4, line 2, between the words facilities and during, insert the phrase of the grantee. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 4, line 18, after the word non-acceptance, insert the phrase of the grantee. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 5, line 20, delete the phrase cut off from and replace it with the phrase not allowed to be aired. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 21, delete the phrase the air. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. In the meantime, minute suspension.
Please don't read anymore number 14
Oh, buti na lang.
because, yes ma'am, because we prepared withdrawal instead.
Session is resumed. Session is resumed.
On page 7, line 17, after the word franchise, insert a comma and the phrase the lifespan of the franchise. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
That is all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Majority Leader?
Mr. President, with the indulgence of the sponsor, may we hear the Section 7 as a whole now? How will Section 7 read again? As amended.
But, okay.
Section 4, Section 7.
Na- 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 na-
1 minute suspension, Mr.
A
President.
minute suspension.
Effective upon acceptance given.
So, Section 7 or Section 4? Okay. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, Section 7 will now read as follows. Section 7, Acceptance and Compliance. This franchise shall become effective upon acceptance given in writing by the grantee to the Congress of the Philippines, to the Committee on Legislative Franchises of the House of Representatives, and the Committee on Public Services of the Senate within 60 days from the effectivity of this act. Upon giving such acceptance, the grantee shall exercise the privileges granted under this act. Non-acceptance of the grantee shall render the franchise void.
No, okay. Thank you, Mr. President. May we now recognize Senator Frank Drilon for a question on one of the amendments proposed by the
Senator
committee.
Dillon
Mr.
is
President.
recognized.
Just to clarify, Mr. President, if the gentle lady will yield the floor.
My pleasure, Mr. President. To answer questions.
May we know if the proposed amendment to Section 10 of the bill is being adopted? I'm sorry that I have to ask this question because I didn't know exactly the status of this amendment. In the bill, in the present franchise, the franchisee may not transfer, merge, or yield control of the corporation grantee without the prior approval of the Congress of the Philippines. There is in bold letters in the form of an amendment of this act. Is that confirmed, sir?
Mr. President, we did not read that amendment anymore. We are
Okay.
withdrawing it.
So, just for the record, this amendment was not introduced,
Yes, Mr. President.
so that the franchise simply reads, in case there is a change of ownership, that the standard provision which says it is not effective without the prior approval of Congress stands, not necessarily in the form of a law.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Ralph Recto for the... No, I'm sorry. I move to close the period of committee amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
And I move to open the period of individual amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, so opened.
May you now recognize Senator Ralph Recto for his individual amendments.
Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. I may have two amendments, but before I propose the first one, just a clarification. Section 1 of the bill states that the franchise is renewed for another 25 years from the approval of this act. On the other hand, Section 6, which speaks of the term of the franchise, states that the franchise shall be in effect for a period of 25 years from the effectivity of this act. Lastly, on page 8, under the proposed Section 16 of this bill, it says that the act shall take effect 15 days after its publication in the official gazette or in a newspaper of general circulation. Do the words approval and effectivity as used in this bill have the same meaning?
Mr. President, I agree with the good senator and accept the amendment used. I think the word effectivity and not approval would be more sufficient.
Thank you for that. So for
Thank you for
consistency,
pointing
we
this out.
use the word effectivity.
Yes, and not approval.
May I now introduce the following amendment. On page 2, line 18, delete the word approval and replace the same with the word effectivity.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
On the second amendment and my last amendment, Mr. President, on page 4, insert a new section after section 7, which will be section 8, which will carry the heading Tax Provisions. This new section shall read as follows. Section 8, Tax Provision. The grantee, its successor, or assigned shall continue to be subject to all applicable taxes, duties, fees, or charges, and other impositions under the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997, Republic Act number 8424 as amended, the Local Government Code of 1991, Republic Act number 7160 as amended, and other applicable laws. Period.
We accept, Mr. President, we accept the amendment. However, let me put on record the GMA network is not asking for any exemption or preferential tax treatment that departs from the current tax regime in specific laws. We deleted the tax provision because we were of the view that the National Internal Revenue Code, RA number 8424 as amended, adequately addresses the tax regime that governs, number one, the sale of services of the grantees of congressional franchise with the VAT, and two, the income of the grantees derived from such sale under Title II of the said code. On the local taxes, local tax ordinances approved pursuant to Section 137 and 151 of the Local Government Code, RA 7160, govern the local taxation applicable to congressional franchise grantees engaged in broadcast services. Hence, specific laws already deal with the national local taxation of grantees of broadcast franchises. Nonetheless, we accept the amendment by the good senator, and we thank him for pointing it out.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr.
So the
President.
proposed amendment has been accepted. Any objection? Senator Drilon?
Not an objection, Mr. President. But before we vote, we would like to know what is now the difference between the present tax treatment in the present franchise and the tax treatment as now proposed by the good Senate President pro tempore.
Yes, thank you for that question, Mr. President. It aligns now, well, whatever taxes they are currently paying, they will continue to pay. My concern was that in the bill at hand, there is no tax provision whatsoever. The committee deleted the tax provision. It was not the intention of the committee that GMA will not have to pay any taxes. And I said during the period of interpolation that the bill will look funny in the sense that all franchises that are passed through Congress have tax provisions. Deletion of the entire tax provision in the bill, amending and extending the GMA franchise, might give an impression that GMA will be exempted from taxes expressly provided under its original franchise. Although there is a rule in taxation that tax exemption should be granted only by clear and unequivocal provision of law expressed in a language too plain to be mistaken, deletion of this provision would still create a general impression that Congress has exempted GMA from paying taxes. Since the franchise is in the nature of a contract between the franchisee and the government, Congress should not delete but instead provide a section clearly expressing the intent of Congress that GMA's revenues will be taxed during the lifetime of the franchise.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you for that explanation. The next question is the ipso facto clause found in franchises. How is that applied in this particular case, Mr. President? We are aware of that principle that whatever is granted in one franchise is ipso facto enjoyed by the other franchise holders. I just want to know whether or not that principle is applicable here to existing franchises of other grantees. Just for the record, Mr.
Section 13 of this franchise does have an equality clause.
Sorry?
This bill would have also an equality clause found in Section 13.
The ipso facto clause.
Equality clause. It is similar to the ipso facto clause.
It's similar to the ipso facto
So today it's called an equality clause.
clause. Equality clause.
Now, furthermore, Mr. President, not all ipso facto clause or equality clause in a franchise would be the same with other franchise when in its applicability. For example, the scope of the franchise does not change.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
Well, I'm just interested in the tax treatment.
Yes.
And I'll be very specific so that
Yeah.
we can be clear about
Yes.
this. This phrase or this provision on taxation would be applicable now to the franchise of ABS-CBN?
Correct.
Of,
Same treatment.
Same treatment?
Same treatment.
Of Channel 5?
Same treatment.
Same treatment
Same treatment
for everyone?
for everyone.
And so, yeah, I just want to spread it into the record so that in questions arise later on, we are clear about the intent of the legislature in accepting and voting on this provision in the franchise of GMA.
That is correct.
So just again, for the record, there is no change or favorable tax treatment that GMA will enjoy under this amendment because, as the gentleman said, it is not the desire of GMA to have preferential treatment.
That is correct, Mr. President.
And there is no reduction.
But will it change the tax treatment of the other
All of them-
TV stations
It will not.
mentioned?
All of them are paying the same taxes.
So the same.
Mr. President.
So we are just stating what's already happening.
That is correct. Because right now, the bill at hand does not have a tax provision. And we are putting a tax provision,
So-
which in effect will be the same for all networks that they
So
pay the
if-
same taxes.
So if there is no tax provision presently, how were they taxed all these years?
No, there is a tax provision on their original franchise, on their
That's-
existing.
Uh-huh.
In the bill that we are considering, the tax provision was deleted. And I am restoring the tax provision.
So in the bill that is being presented, the tax provision was deleted.
Was deleted.
Which tax provision is in the existing franchise?
That is correct.
Mr. President, actually, the equality clause does not apply to taxes, but to benefits in terms of regulatory requirements. And it is already in the general tax provisions that apply and that will apply to any other franchise holders. It doesn't matter if they had it in their original provision or not.
No, I think what the gentle lady is saying is that, for example, if we were to put a different tax provision here, no equality clause will apply. In effect, Congress favored GMA if we did it that way. And I'm saying that our amendment treats everyone the same.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
With or without this amendment, they will be taxed as they are taxed right now.
Yes, Mr. President.
Is that the effect?
Yes, but the point is this, Mr. President. I've yet to come across a franchise passed by Congress without a tax provision. Now, in the original franchise made tax provision, we are extending it by 25 years. That is the nature of that is what they're asking for, an extension of the franchise. So why do we delete the tax provision? And that's why I am restoring the tax provisions.
But you're now imposing a different tax regime.
I am not.
Because
It will
before
be
it
the
was a
same.
franchise tax.
No, before it was a franchise tax amended by a law which imposed a VAT on them. Now they will still be paying income tax,
Yes.
value-added tax, all relevant taxes, including local government taxes. So they're treated the same with any other network.
So this clarifies the tax regime and then makes the form also
Proper.
proper because
Yes.
the tax provision is there.
That is correct.
Okay. So the proposed amendment has been accepted.
Yes, Mr. President.
So any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, there are two other members who wish to propose individual amendments. So therefore, I move to suspend consideration of House Bill 4631 under Committee Report Number 36 and ask the Senate President to direct the Secretariat to prepare a clean copy for tomorrow's individual amendments of the other members of the Senate.
Let me first direct the Secretariat to prepare the clean copy as requested by the Majority Leader. Any objection to suspend consideration? There being none, we suspend consideration of House Bill number 4631 under Committee Report number 36.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the Chamber, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1277 under Committee Report number 19.
Okay, any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill number 1277 under Committee Report number 19 is in order.
Mr. President, this is the Free Internet Access in Public Places Act. Parliamentary status of measure is that we are now in the period of amendments. So may we recognize the sponsor, Chairman of the Committee on Science and Technology, Senator Bam Aquino.
Senator Aquino is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. On page 2, after line 12, insert the following paragraph, which shall read as follows. At the minimum, the program shall be made available in areas within the foregoing public places where maximum use and access to the benefits shall be ensured, such as but limited to computer laboratories and libraries in public basic education institutions and state universities and colleges, main lobbies and hallways of public buildings or transport terminals, and at main assembly points in public parks, hospitals, and health centers. Appropriate signage shall be placed in conspicuous areas of sites with access to the free internet service provided by the program. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
On page 2, line 16, after the word permits, add a comma and then licenses.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Page 2, line 16, delete the words certificates pertinent and replace it with the phrase clearances needed for the construction of infrastructure or installation of equipment in coordination with the respective issuing government agencies and departments for. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 2, line 21, after the word program, add a new sentence to read as follows. The revenue collected from local fees, charges, and other local impositions shall inure solely to the benefit of and be subject to disposition by the local government units. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 2, line 22, delete the phrase conduct the necessary public consultations and consultations with and replace it with coordinate with the. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 23, delete the comma after parenthesis NGAS and replace it with the word end. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 23, after LGUs, insert the phrase and conduct the necessary consultations with. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved. Majority Leader?
Will the sponsor read again line 23 as amended?
Why not the entire paragraph as amended?
Okay, from line 22 na lang,
Yeah.
pwede na.
Okay. Mr. President, I have one more amendment to change the whole paragraph, and we can read the whole paragraph, if that's okay, Mr. President.
The reason is, the reason I asked, Mr. President, is that the use of the word "and" twice. Anyways, yes, I will.
Yes, okay.
I will wait for the other amendment, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Senator Aquino,
President.
please.
One more amendment for this paragraph, Mr. President. On the same page, line 25, delete the word regarding and replace it with the word for. So the paragraph, Mr. President, shall now read as follows. The DICT shall coordinate with the concerned national government agencies, NGAs, and local government units, LGUs, and conduct the necessary consultations with civil society organizations and other stakeholder groups in the development of the implementing rules and policies for the permitting and certification process. That's
Any
the
objection?
amended, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Continue, Mr. President.
Yes, continue.
Mr. President, on page 2, line 28, after the word issuances, add the words and agreements. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 29, before the word released, insert the words issued or. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 2, after line 32, insert a new section on private property ownership to read as follows. Private property ownership. The right to private property shall be respected in the implementation of the program. In case the construction of any infrastructure or installation of equipment shall involve or affect privately owned land or property, the DICT shall ensure that the necessary public consultations are held with affected or concerned parties, such as homeowners and homeowner associations, non-government organizations and people's organizations, and local government units before the program is implemented in their respective jurisdiction. Such public consultations shall conform to the manner as stated in Republic Act Number 9904, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Homeowners, and as specified in Rule 11, Article 54 of the Implementing Rules and Regulations of Republic Act Number 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code of 1991. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? This is a new section, right? Any
Yes, Mr.
objection?
President.
Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 6, delete the word proscribe and replace it with the phrase prohibit any unfair methods of competition and. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, after line 17, insert the following new sections to read as follows. Public-private participation. To promote an efficient and cost-effective delivery of the free internet access for public spaces, the DICT may partner with private individuals and entities in the implementation of the program. Private sector participants to the implementation of the program shall not be required to secure franchises from the Congress and local government units. Excess capacity may be offered to deliver internet access service for compensation to the citizens and households in the areas wherein program facilities are located, provided that said individuals or entities register to the National Telecommunications Commission as value-added service providers. In order to lower costs, increase and improve the free internet access for public spaces, private service providers are encouraged to exchange data traffic at domestic internet protocol, IP, exchanges, which may be designated by the DICT. Another paragraph, Mr. President. Transparent usage policy. No fees shall be collected for use of free internet access in public spaces. A transparent usage policy shall be implemented to ensure that individuals will have equitable access. No restrictions or requirements that hinder access shall be imposed, except to implement a transparent usage policy or when there is a clear and present security or technical risk that cannot be remedied through normal technical solutions. So moved, Mr. President.
Just to clarify, these are two new sections.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, I plan to move a omnibus motion to correct all the numbering,
The numbering,
at the
yes,
end. Yes, Mr. President. Next, Mr. President, on page 3, line 18, before the word data, add the term performance and service quality. So moved, Mr. President.
Before the word data in the title.
Page 3, line 18, Mr. President.
Yeah, is it in the title? Because there's another data. On line 18. Section 10, data collection, and then another one, the DICT shall collect data. So, which of the two?
One second suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
The official. No, it's the body. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, this is the data, word data in the body.
Okay, so the DICT shall, before the word data, shall
Collect performance and service quality data.
and service quality data. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the same page, after line 19, add a new paragraph to read as follows. The NTC shall provide minimum standards for quality of service, including but not limited to download speed, latency, packet loss, and jitter for public free internet service. The minimum quality of service standards for free public internet access services shall not be lower than minimum quality of service standards provided for retail basic internet connectivity services offered to the public. So moved, Mr. President.
An objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 20, after the word publish, insert the word such. So moved, Mr. President.
Publish such information. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 20, delete the phrase such as but not limited to speed and stability of, and replace it with the words on the quality of. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 22, after the phrase without need of, delete the article A and replace it with the words prior approval of. So moved, Mr. President.
Page 3, line
22.
22. Okay. With prior approval.
I can read the new paragraph, Mr. President.
Mr. President, may I know from the sponsor on what section that will fall in now? Will it be in the new section 10 or section 10? Because after, on
That's-
line 19, after the word act, you inserted a new section.
Yes, Mr. President.
So what
This is the
happens
old-
to line 20 to 22? It goes to the new section or?
Oh, Mr. President, 1 minute suspension, please.
Minute suspension.
This one, no? Yes, sir. Okay, but that's still section 10, right? It's now section... It's the old section 10. Yes, but it's the old section 10.
Sir, we didn't mention this section. Sir, yung pinasok na new section. Sir, yung pinasok na new section. Okay. Right before.
Line 19,
Yeah, I'll correct it. Sir President, ready to resume.
Session is resumed. There is a pending motion. Any objection?
Mr. President, I was provided some clarification by the
Go ahead, please.
Majority Floor Leader. Mr. President, we moved to insert after line 19 a new paragraph which read as follows, no? The NTC shall provide minimum standards.
Yes.
This was accepted by the body, Mr. President.
Yes.
Instead of line 19, Mr. President, it should have been line 22 and not line 19.
After line 22,
After line
a
22.
new
Mr.
section, a new section.
Section or paragraph? I think it's, the motion was it's a new, add a new paragraph only.
No, I think it's a new section, Mr. President. I remember the sponsor saying it was a new section.
Mr. President, may I have another minute suspension?
Minute suspension.
So hindi siya new section? Yes. So tama yung kanina. Tama yung kanina. New section. I made a system.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is
Mr.
resumed.
President, I withdraw the previous statement, Mr. President. We are on the right track. May I resume, Mr.
And
President?
that was not a new section. It
No,
was
Mr.
a
President.
Yes,
paragraph. Okay.
I probably misheard, but that's what I
yes.
heard, so that
So-
I wanted a clarification. I'm clarified now, if that is the manifestation of the sponsor.
There is a pending motion.
Mr. President, we withdraw the motion, moving it to after line 22. That's withdrawn, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Yes, but the other one before that, on page 3, line 22. Are
Yes,
you pursuing
Mr.
that?
President, I have not read that yet, Mr. President.
Okay, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, on page 3, line 22, after the phrase "without need of," delete the article A and replace it with the words "prior approval of." The paragraph shall now read as follows: The DICT shall periodically collect, update, and publish such information on the quality of Internet service and program sites and ensure immediate access to such information without need of prior approval of request. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection, hearing none? Approved.
On page 3, after line 28, insert a new section on Free Public Internet Access Fund to read as follows: Free Public Internet Access Fund. There is hereby created a Free Public Internet Access Fund, FPIF, in parentheses, under the management of DICT to provide financing for the implementation of the program. The FPIF shall be funded out of the spectrum users' fees, in parentheses SUF, collected by the National Telecommunications Commission, NTC, and other sources to be identified by the Department of Budget and Management, DBM. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection, hearing none? Approved.
On page 3, line 31, after the word technology, delete comma and replace it with the word and. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection, hearing none? Approved.
On page 3, line 31, after the word commission, add a period.
Any objection, hearing none? Approved.
On page 3, line 32, delete the phrase "and concerned local government units and national government agencies, including the Department of Education in the case of public basic education institutions and the Department of Health in the case of public hospitals and healthcare centers." So moved, Mr. President.
Delete.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 35, delete the phrase "automatically appropriated out of the spectrum users' fees, SUF, collection of the NTC," and replace it with "sourced from the Free Public Internet Access Fund." So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, the section on appropriation shall now read as follows. The amount necessary for the immediate and effective implementation of this act shall be charged against any available funds of the Department of Information and Communications Technology and the National Telecommunications Commission. Thereafter, such sums as may be necessary for the implementation of this act shall be sourced from the Free Public Internet Access Fund. Any deficiency in the budget requirements for the implementation of this act shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act, Mr. President. Mr. President,
So noted, yes.
due to the new sections, the Secretariat, we move for the Secretariat to make the necessary adjustments in the preparation of the clean copy of the bill, Mr. President.
Motion should follow. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all. Maraming salamat, Mr.
Thank you
President.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. May we ask the Secretariat for a clean copy for tomorrow, Mr. President?
Secretariat is directed to prepare a clean copy for tomorrow's use.
I move that we close the period of committee amendments, Mr. President.
Individual,
Committee amendments muna. Individual ba ito?
we were,
No, we're not ready to close the period of individual amendments, Mr. President, because there are two other members of the Senate who wish to introduce individual amendments. But to facilitate and to make sure that we are not crisscrossing on the sections, we will wait for a clean copy before the other members of the Senate introduce their individual amendments.
so the motion is to suspend
Yes,
consideration.
I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1277 under Committee Report Number 19.
Any objection? There being none, so suspended.
Ako wala na. Baka yung iba pong business. Hindi ko alam kay...
Mr. President, I move to adjourn. I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, February 28. I withdraw the motion, Mr.
Senator
President.
Drilon is recognized.
Just a request before we adjourn. In today's agenda, number 4 in the agenda is the committee report number 30 under Senate Bill number 14. This is the indexation of the values found in our 1930 revised penal code to update them to present values. We have discussed this with Senator Lacson, who is scheduled to interpolate. Senator Lacson and I agreed that we have it for tomorrow. So can we just have it as the first item on the agenda so that we can, this is not a very difficult bill. This is a upgrading of the monetary values.
I'll try to work that out tomorrow, Mr. President, as of now, because earlier, we agreed with Senator Francis Pangilinan that the COCO levy be taken up. But I will schedule it as what we have agreed upon. I'll make the request of of Senator Drilon to the second. But we can talk to Senator Pangilinan that we take it up first. Anyway, it's
Because I'm afraid, Mr. President, if we put Senate Bill 1233 ahead, then we might as well, accept the proposition that we cannot take up this other bill. The interpretation will be very short, from what I understand.
All right, then I will make sure that that is what we will do as requested by the distinguished gentleman from Iloilo, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Yes, Senator Ontiveros, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I also respectfully request that Committee Report number 17 on Senate Bill number 1271, or an act prohibiting discrimination on the basis of SOGI and providing penalties therefore, through the kindness of the Majority Leader, be scheduled again tomorrow. I would just like to note, Mr. President, that today is the 5th session that this bill is scheduled for interpellation, pero hindi po natuloy. I spoke earlier to Senator Pacquiao, and he told me that he will no longer interpellate, but later on introduce amendments to the bill. And I had been hoping that Senator Villanueva and I could have the interpellation. Since apparently it is not going to happen today, I respectfully request that it be rescheduled again, and early enough in our agenda for the day tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, we will ask the Secretariat or the Rules Committee Secretariat to include it in the agenda tomorrow, but I suggest that the distinguished lady talk to the interpellators, because we've always been placing it in the agenda, but the interpellators are not ready. They have been asking for a day or so afterwards. So I suggest that they talk privately so that they can schedule when the interpellations can start.
I will do, Mr. President, and I thank the good Majority Leader for faithfully scheduling and rescheduling this bill for interpellation. I reiterate that when I asked him on the floor earlier, Senator Pacquiao said that he would introduce amendments and no longer interpellate. But yes, I will talk to Senator Villanueva to try to ensure that our interpellation will proceed tomorrow. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I move to adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, February 28, 2017.
Any objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, February 28, 2017.